rescheduled March 2024 Executive Committee meeting of the Board of Retirement System. Today is Thursday, April 4th. The time is now 1:14 p.m. Please be reminded that the committee meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the BERS YouTube channel. I will now begin with the roll call. John Matterich.
Present.
Donald Nesbitt. Where's he? He's here. Greg Faulkner.
Present.
And Anthony Giordano.
Present and accountable.
Karina Pollen. I see is this one.
Present.
Agreed.
Hi, guys.
We have a quorum. I would also like to note for the record, alternate committee members, Effie Zachary, and Allison Hirsch, designee for the New York City Controller, Landa is in attendance. Now on to the agenda.
Also, Alice Ho, Russ want me.
Okay. Alice Ho is also here, virtually, and Russell Berkeley. Agenda item number one is to consider the minutes for February 2024 Executive Committee meeting, a summary of which was included in your packages sent prior to the meeting. May I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved. Second. Are you sitting?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can.
Motion-
Very eager. Why they didn't want people sitting at the table. It's confusing.
Motion made by Anthony Giordano. Do we have a second?
I was quiet.
Second, John Matterich. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please indicate if you're in favor.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. We have several agenda items for today's meeting. And again, there are no contract related items. So we'll skip straight to agenda item number 3 with a brief update by investment lead Salil Mehta. Salil?
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to talk briefly about pacing today. What you'll see on the chart on the screen is a way of showing pacing. So for private equity, and I'm only going to cover the two asset classes that we'll be discussing today and for investments. There's a current pipeline, 145 million. We have a target for this year of 120 million. I have these in 1/12 increments, so you can see basically end of March is a quarter of the way through the year. We've approved 25, and we're going to be discussing 10 today. We don't mention the names because we're in the public session, but you could tell that if we approve today's investment in private equity, we'll be roughly in line from a time perspective for the year. I'm going to forward to real estate. I'll show a similar chart. Right now, there's 66 million in the pipeline that's known with the actual dollar amounts. And we're looking today at 20 on a target of 60. So again, roughly in line from a time perspective. It's also worth noting that the following meeting in a couple of weeks, we'll have a investment that's going to be considered that will consume the rest of the 40 for the target for the year. So that's just something to keep in mind in terms of where this is going. I wanted to go, first of all, any questions on that from anyone? And for folks online, because their screens are small, I can't see if maybe if you have your hand raised. So if you can just speak up, that'd be helpful.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And if you're going to address this, fine. But in terms of vintage, right? So last year was a rough year for PE, right? We a lot of our managers did not return capital on the schedule. Yet we're fixated on this vintage, which seems to be driving the pacing conversation. I don't know everything, but I know a little. Try to explain to me how vital, if it doesn't necessarily come back the other way, right? Performance on the other side can be varied. And why do we have to be so vigilant when we're already potentially overweight or don't have the managers that we necessarily would like to see, kind of feeling compelled to
Sure.
at these.
I'll just mention some remarks and then Oxy is here to mention, Oxy for deeper dive. So two things. I've decomposed the risk on different attributes, and I've shown this in previous meetings where vintage risk is something you do want to diversify against, but it wasn't like at the very top of the list of like the risk pyramid of things you want to have to consider. In terms of mapping this to the weights, we came into the year at just under 13% weight in private equity in the portfolio. We have the asset allocation previously was at 9%. We've now have a new one at 8%. If you carry over the 4% tolerance, that would have been, we're high. Now, fast forward to right now, our actual weight is around 12.3 or 12.4. It varies a little bit. So it's come down a little bit, which is the welcome relief. If you decompose that reduction in weight, which is a very small amount in recent months, a lot of it has been, and it's not a denominator effect, it's from the numerator, where you had a one-off phenomenal rise in US public markets, and you had a small coupling of low returns in some of these private markets, and that accounts for that reduction down to 12.3 or 12.4, more so than a curtailment, which we still have to do in our pacing to get it back to the target. But I would, unless there's questions about that aspect, I would like give Oxy a chance to opine on vintage risk and the importance of that.
Sandra, would you like to take that?
Sure. Hi, Anthony, thank you for your good question. It's really more about doing pacing consistently over time so that when the distributions start coming back in, let's say 2 years down the road and then going further, you're not going to miss them, say 5 years out. If you just kind of stop making allocations or under allocate, it's just going to be harder to rebalance. But more importantly, if you kind of leave a big gap, then down the road, you're going to miss those returns. So that's really the short answer. And again, this is just a tool for thinking through how you can estimate how much money you commit each year in private equity to make sure that over the long term, and by that, we mean 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the overall return profile smooths out and you don't have any big gaps of missed opportunities. That's the short answer.
Thanks.
I
just,
hope that helps.
no, it does.
And-
But it's just the balance of figuring out, right, if we're automatically, it automatically indenture us to the next fund. And it seems like we do that very often. We're funding the next fund prior to even the cash, even disbursement on the previous fund. And it's just, I'll leave that to you experts though. I'm just asking the question.
No, absolutely not. You do not have to commit to any fund because you've previously made a commitment to it. In general, when we just indicate that it's a re-up, we're saying that this is an existing manager and it's not a new one. And we just make that distinction because, quite frankly, each time you're looking at investing in an individual fund, it's really up to you to say yes or no. And we just indicate that you may have had a previous relationship with that manager, and then we can show you that performance specific to your portfolio versus their overall track record. So you absolutely can say no to any fund, regardless of whether you've invested in them before.
Thank you very much. And I won't ask this, I ask that question, I think every 2 months.
And one thing I'll just note on this pipeline, you'll recall that with some of the emerging managers, they kind of, you don't, Salil forgot to mention that the actual, let me be clear, there is an investment in Knox Lane 2, which is a private equity manager. So to date, in addition to the 25 million, which you approved for Clear Lake, there was an additional 4 point something commitment made to Knox Lane 2.
Sandra, what-
So to date, you've committed close to 30 million.
I'm gonna resume the recording.
No more questions.
My fingers out there just get up. So that's all the remarks this month.
What do you have? Thank you, Salil. Now we'll need to turn to executive session for the next agenda items.
So moved.
Tony with the motion. Do we have a second? John Manovich with a second. Okay. All those in favor of going into executive session, please indicate if you're in favor. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We're now in executive session. Echoing? Salil? Okay, so now we'll report out from executive session. In executive session, the board had one investment discussion in public equities. Additionally, the board approved a re-up to a fund and rejected a recommendation for a private equity fund. This was the last item on the agenda for today's executive committee meeting. The next scheduled executive committee meeting for the Board of Ed Retirement System is Thursday, April 18th, 2024 at 1 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Motion made by Anthony Giordano. Do we have a second?
Yes.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say if you're in favor. Aye. Thank you. This meeting is. We'll see you,
18th.
for the 18th of this month.